Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening. I am your host, Kiana Canada. I am a transnational repression researcher and a appointed special rapporteur on the rights of Black Americans who are descendants of slaves. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we are going to be continuing our discussion on transnational repression. We are going to be talking about coercion by proxy, and hopefully by the end of this segment, Freedom House will do more research on the United States and Ireland and their participation in transnational repression. It's a call to action to Freedom House to start to look more into the political and transnational activity of the U.S. government, as well as the Republic of Ireland. And so we are going to get into this discussion. Earlier today, I was going to record this video, but when I went to the city center, there was a festival going on, so I was going to record it in the courtyard of Belfast City Council. But of course, like I said, there was a festival going on, so didn't get the opportunity to record the video. And so we are going to talk about it tonight. And I think that this is better because I'm not, chewing gum and walking at the same time. I am basically focused on the topic at hand so I can deliver it intellectually, and hopefully we'll have a rich debate about the topic. And I am going to be pulling from lived experience so that you understand exactly what I have gone through, as well as understanding how the phenomenon works. And so the kind of discussion that we are going to be having in this online review is a very descriptive one. So our goal is to understand a common social phenomenon by observing the detail of the elements that make it a phenomenon in order to provide an empirical basis for a valid argument. My argument is, of course, that the Irish governments, the Republic of Ireland and the United States of America, Northern Ireland, they also engage in transnational repression. To be sure, I first experienced transnational repression when I was in the Republic of Ireland. I lived in a couple of countries before I lived in the Republic of Ireland. I lived in Sweden, I lived in Canada, and didn't experience any transnational repression or transnational reprisals in those two countries. While I was in Canada as well as Sweden, I wasn't blogging or writing articles. That all started when I was in the Republic of Ireland, and I started to write for The Jurist. And my articles got a number of views. I think an article that I wrote was shared by politicians in the global South, and that article got, I think, 10,000 views. And so it's quite interesting that after that article was shared, that I began to experience what can only be described as transnational repression. So I'm still calling on Micheál Martin, the Taoiseach of the Republic of Ireland, to speak out against transnational repression. And I'm still calling on the Republic of Ireland to launch an inquiry, if not an investigation, into Maurice O'Sullivan, who was a security guard at Cork, a security guard at the Kinsale Road Accommodation Center, Bradley Hale, who was a participant in acts that I would describe as transnational repression, as well as Donal Herlihy. And I will link a picture of that person to this video. And just so that we are on the right sheet of music and that we have a basic understanding of what transnational means, because sometimes it gets lost in translation. What is transnational? You may say, well, Kiana, what does that mean? What does it mean for an offense to be transnational? So an offense is transnational if it satisfies only one, of a number of native conditions. It is committed in more than one state. It is committed in one state, but a substantial part of its preparation, planning, direction, and control takes place in another state. It is committed in one state, but involves an organized crime group that engages in criminal activities in more than one state. It is committed in one state, but has a substantial effect in another state. So let's go through each of those. It's important to state, though, before we go into each of these, that transnational repression really can be conceptualized as states using their diplomatic relations and their intelligence capacities to reach across borders to silence dissent of their citizens. As I've stated in a number of videos, the literature is evolving, and it is demonstrating that foreign nations do put foreign nationals through transnational repression, as we have seen with the U.S. putting Julian Assange through transnational repression. So it's not unheard of there is a rich debate as it relates to transnational repression, and there is a strong argument that the U.S. as well as the Republic of Ireland has put me through transnational repression. For clarification purposes, transnational repression generally involves state power. So sometimes you have organized crime groups doing it on behalf of a state. You have individuals acting on the behalf of a state. It's impossible for just an ordinary person to engage in transnational repression. Transnational repression really needs to involve state agents, state actors. So for example, let's say, for instance, you have a singular person, right? You have a singular person who is, for example, part of them, maybe like a gang leader, right? like let's say, for instance, you have the Bloods or the Crips, or you have like these, the Mafia or something like that. Well, although some of these groups are connected sometimes to government officials, we understand that with these groups, sometimes they control urban cities or communities. That would not be transnational repression. Transnational repression is where state agents, to reiterate, are using their diplomatic relations, their intelligence capacities, and of course, proxies to silence a person's voice. They do it in a number of ways, such as incommunicado detention, extraordinary renditions, enforced disappearances, unalivement. These are the hard tactics. I am more concerned right now with the soft tactics, which are digital transnational repression and coercion by proxy. So going through these one by one, it is committed in more than one state. So to reiterate, when I was in the Republic of Ireland and I fled the Republic of Ireland because of those transnational reprisals and the state and its activity followed me to Northern Ireland, that is a component. It satisfies the first component. And keep in mind, it only needs to satisfy one. 2, it is committed in one state, but a substantial part of its preparation, planning, direction, and control takes place in another state. So if this is, of course, the United States and its officials, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, or whomever, Ryan Lascelles of NISO's Group Limited. Well, when I was in the Republic of Ireland, of course, Ryan Lascelles is here in Belfast. And so if he was the perpetrator and the official that was engaging in those acts and using the asylum community as proxies, then this would satisfy the second element. It is committed in one state, but a substantial part of its preparation, its planning, direction, and control takes place in another state. This could also be, to reiterate, the U.S. government, where it has learned that I learned of my political activity abroad and made the decision to try and silence my voice through a number of tactics. One, using psychiatry, political misuse of psychiatry to silence my voice. And so that planning could have happened, within the halls of the U.S. government, and that carried over into the Republic of Ireland. It is committed in one state, but involves an organized crime group that engages in criminal activities in more than one state. So here we can think about an organized crime group as these cyber hackers, these independent contractors that are essentially contracted by these cybersecurity agencies or the government itself to carry out these attacks on dissidents as well as human rights defenders and journalists. And they all work together to carry out this activity for the government. And that's what makes transnational repression, digital transnational repression, so difficult to distinguish and to identify, because oftentimes this activity is outsourced to IT persons, but I would almost argue that there is a pattern and a practice of state agents engaging in transnational repression, such as the Police Service of Northern Ireland, possibly the Home Office, and other government agencies that are supposed to be curbing this kind of activity, but are instead perpetrating it. And lastly, it is committed in one state, but has a substantial effect in another state. And so, as I stated before, when I first learned that I was being put through transnational repression, this happened in the Republic of Ireland. And so I believe that a lot of that preparation and that planning took part in the Republic of Ireland, if not the United States. And some of that, those strategies and tactics had a substantial effect here in the Republic of Ireland, here in Northern Ireland, because remember, I was ousted from the university because of the dissertation that I wanted to write on transnational repression. Essentially, I'm isolated, and anytime that I try and engage in a constructive debate, intelligence agencies will intercept my communications so that I'm not talking to anyone, and that they're keeping me essentially isolated so that they can control who I speak to and who I don't speak to. And we're going to get into that a little bit later about what that is, okay? So now that we understand and we have a good grasp of what a transnational offense is and why this constitutes transnational repression, before we get into the rest of this stream, I want to urge you to subscribe to this video. Also follow me at Real Kiana Canada on my YouTube channel. You can follow me on Facebook at Kiana Canada. On Facebook, I don't have any followers that has to do with transnational repression, with the Republic of Ireland in the United States and their proxies, their cyber hackers that are keeping my followers, keeping me without any followership, and that is to really silence my voice, to make me feel as though what I'm talking about is not having an impact, what I'm talking about is not important. But I know that it is, and I know that many people are impacted by transnational repression all around the globe, and it is another reason why I am urging Freedom House to really look into the Republic of Ireland and the U.S. government, because they are dangerous perpetrators of this kind of activity. Now, if either of these governments think I'm wrong about my assessment, then they have my number, they know exactly where I am, they can call me and have a discussion with me. But as I see it now, this is the United States and the Republic of Ireland, and they're both doing it together. And sometimes states will tag team on victims and journalists and human rights defenders to silence their voice. It happens all the time. And now that we have a good understanding of a transnational offense, transnational repression, what is coercion by proxy? Well, coercion by proxy, I want to talk about that so you have a good understanding of it. Coercion by proxy is by directing repression towards diaspora family members, which does not involve incursions by the perpetrating state into the territory of another state. What does that mean? So what will happen is that the voice of the victim's family members, so if you are a diaspora member and you are a journalist or a human rights defender, an activist, you're abroad, the voice of your family member is silent. So for example, I called my sister and I said, I think the family should get a lawyer, or they should at least consider legal representation, and to find out if your rights are being protected. And my sister, think about it, that's logical and rational advice, right? If you don't know much about your rights, you can go to a solicitor, you can go to the American Civil Liberties Union, you can go to a number of places to see if the state is overreaching and violating your rights. And regrettably, my sister argued me down that that wasn't a good idea, that she argued that, you know, like she literally battled me on why that wasn't a good idea and how that was just not logical for her to go and find out if her rights are being protected. And I attribute that to coercion by proxy, by the U.S. government contacting my sister on a daily basis and harassing her and intimidating her. And I would almost argue using some sort of reward power, because oftentimes I've noticed that whenever I talk about a political topic, a substantial political topic, especially if it has to do with the US government, I'll get a call from my sister, and there is like this huge argument that she and I will have. And this is not really her arguing with me about the things that I'm talking about. It's really the United States using her as a proxy for its voice, right? Using her as a proxy for its voice. And it's triangulation. So, for example, the US will insert itself and create division between me and, of course, my sister and my family. And so that in another video, I'm going to do probably a whole series on how the United States is a homewrecker, how it destroys families, how it just the US and the Republic of Ireland, how these two countries actually do more damage to domestic families than it does bringing people together. And to reiterate, I might do a series on that because it's going to involve triangulation. It's going to involve, remember, back when the civil rights movement, back in the day during the civil rights movement, the U.S., what did it do? The Federal Bureau of Investigation, through its program COINTELPRO, and of course other programs, what did they do? They contacted Martin Luther King's family and told all these lies and sent poison pen letters and alleged that Martin Luther King was cheating on his wife and etc. They still do that today. You know, it's a little bit more sophisticated, but they still do act as proxies today. It's more so like, if you've ever seen the movie Mean Girls, where Regina and so I think Regina and the other girls are talking, and then there's like this triangulation that's getting all the girls to fight against each other. It's just like that. But back to coercion by proxy. Coercion by proxy is less likely to be politically problematic, and they can use this to punish people outside of the country. And coercion by proxy is used to constrain and retaliate against public activity. And so another example is if you are really close with someone in your family and you really care about them, the U.S. government as well as the Republic of Ireland, what they will do is try and create a wedge between you and that person, because what they're essentially trying to do is control you and contain you. And if they break away all of your structures, if they break away all your support systems, they break away every person from your life, then they have gained that control over you. And this is what they want. And you have to think about the mentality of a government, the mentality of a person working in that capacity that is attempting to do precisely that. Just think about it. You have a person that is spending years to isolate you from your family, isolate you from support structures, pushing you out of university, not only pushing you out of university, but pushing you out of social events. I remember when I was at Queen's University, Belfast, there was a couple of things that I tried to do when I was in the university. I tried to join a debate society, because that's exactly what I did when I was in Canada. I was part of a debate society and just had a really good time. And I tried to do that here when I was at Queen's University, Belfast. But what happened was the state had operatives working at the university and pushed me where like I couldn't debate in the programs that was there. So there was this debate society called Literific, and I paid my debate membership fee and they wouldn't even let me debate. And I know that has to do with transnational repression and the state's involvement in that. Another club that I tried to join there was a QUB Law Society, and what was regrettable is that the Law Society was not really, the time that I went to a couple of meetings, it wasn't anything about law and didn't discuss anything related to law. And I think that was, we can attribute that to state actors as well that tried to dumb down the Law Society so that I would not find it to be interesting. And there were other organizations that they tried to pitch to me to join or to take over so that they could actually rip it right from under me. And that was Amnesty International. So I often, when I was trying to join these independent societies and debate societies on my own, the things that I was interested in, I got an email that said, why don't you, run Amnesty International at QUB. And the only reason why they were trying to get me to join Amnesty International QUB is because they already knew that I had a prior disagreement with Patrick Corrigan because he didn't advocate on my behalf. And so if I would have said, yeah, I'll join Amnesty International or I'll run this society, they could have ripped that out from under me. And that's their whole purpose, is to take away and to do harm. And we should continue to ask ourselves whether or not these state actors whether or not there should be stronger protections for journalists, human rights defenders, and activists, and whether or not transnational repression should be enshrined in domestic law, whether or not police departments that engage in transnational repression on behalf of foreign countries, whether or not cybersecurity agencies like NISO's group engages in transnational repression on behalf of the U.S. government, whether or not proxy groups engage in transnational repression on behalf of government officials or cybersecurity agencies, whether or not that this should be enshrined in domestic law as a criminal offense. Now, keep in mind, I understand that people follow the orders of state agents because they're afraid. And I'm not talking about those persons such as my sister, who I know is afraid and who has been harassed by these federal officials living in her city. I'm not talking about her because I know that she's being coerced into this persona, and she's doing this on behalf of course, the United States government to forward its regime and its propaganda about my being this kind of person, or to tarnish my reputation as a human rights defender. And so I'm not talking about her because, of course, I know that she is also a victim. I'm talking about people who are actively partaking in this kind of repression. They're not victims. They're not coerced into it. They're actively volunteering to do it. They have an axe to grind, or they've been fed some piece of information and they feel like they need to join the cause against someone who is being put through transnational repression. Those persons are not victims. Those persons are perpetrators, and they are actively helping the person or the state that is carrying out those acts. And this brings us to, we're going to build on psychology and a concept in psychology, which is flying monkeys. Well, what is flying monkeys? Well, flying monkeys were those winged monkeys that appeared in The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, and they did the bidding of the Wicked Witch of the West. And so this makes an appearance in psychological research, especially as it deals with like narcissism and persons with narcissistic personality disorders. And according to the Star Network, flying monkeys are those the narcissist recruits to spread gossip, to surveil, and to serve as go-betweens. And so we can see how the narcissist state agents that are hiding behind the scenes will recruit these persons to, deliver this gossip on a person, to surveil them, or to serve as a go-between. So these are intermediaries, right? Much like how the states do with victims of transnational repression, that sometimes they will use a person to deliver interrogatories to the victim. And essentially what they're doing is they're searching for information that they can use to harm the person. So what is regrettable is that victims often don't know that they're doing this. Victims think, oh, well, if I participate, or if I play along with it, or if I cooperate, that this probably will subside, or it will be finished very soon. But what they don't understand is that these state agents are constantly looking for information every single day. This is a 24-hour, 7-day a week, 365 days out of a year. They don't get any rest. They do this 24 hours, 7 days a week, looking for information to discredit and to bring human rights defenders, journalists, activists, researchers down to their knees. The flying monkeys themselves might buy into, to reiterate, the abuser's false personality and may be too afraid to stand up to them. So if you have a federal agent, such as someone from the Gardaí or the Police Service of Northern Ireland or from the Federal Bureau of Investigations, and they're making visits to your home, and they are in this legitimate position, and they're serving you a story, that will make most people afraid, especially people that really haven't been face to face with the judicial system, or haven't been face to face with like police officers, had these encounters with them. Some people are afraid, and some people do as they are told. And so they are not going to stand up to these people in positions of power, because oftentimes they don't know their rights. And that brings me to what I really want to talk about, because remember, all of this is interconnected. So we have the phenomenon of transnational repression, and then there is a component of coercion by proxy. We understand what that is, and then when we peel back the layer, we can sort of see how the public and family members do the bidding of state agents or persons such as cyber bullies, cyber hackers, people that you can't quite see. And essentially it is bullying on a large scale. And that brings us to what we're going to talk about again today. This is Bullying in Sight. It is by Tim Field. And there's a little bit that I want to get into. And so I want to go back to how the bully keeps their hold. So the bully in this case is, of course, state agents, people that are in positions of power, federal agents engaged in transnational repression. How do they keep their hold? Now, remember, before we get into that, I want to say that oftentimes we as human beings, we do seek out intermediaries to perhaps solve a problem that we have, right? That's just human nature. Sometimes we don't feel like we are in a position to do it ourselves, and then we seek out an intermediary that can do this for us. We see this in arbitration, conciliation, mediation, where people, two parties that are opposing each other, often seek out someone to mediate or to arbitrate the matter, right? And that's not what flying monkeys do, or that's not what that's not what a narcissist does. Every person, people who want a problem to be solved will look toward conciliation, mediation, and arbitration, right? But for the narcissist, for these state agents that are in these legitimate positions, their whole purpose is not to mediate, conciliate, or arbitrate a matter, or to come to a resolution about an issue. It's to maintain their grip on the victim, the bully's hold. And so the bully's hold seems to comprise of one, dependency. The victim becomes dependent on the bully to allow them to get through each day without their life being made hell. And how do I see this in my life? Because I like to use my life as an antidote, because it's so informative to understanding transnational repression and the bully's hold. So in my particular situation, state agents had my Section 95 support taken away from me. The Home Office was likely 100% complicit in that. And this allows the bully to keep a grip on me. It allows the bully to decide, okay, well, we don't think that she should be in the asylum process. She shouldn't be getting support. She shouldn't be able to buy her own food, the kind of food that she likes. So force her to seek out these food banks, force her to seek out this, and this allows the bully to continue to control the resources that I have and the food that I eat. So that's dependency, because I'm constantly depending on the state. So for example, these food banks for sustenance. And for the bully, they like that because that puts them in a position of control, approval. The victim feels compelled to seek approval and acceptance in advance of every action in order to forestall or preclude criticism. And this is something else, is that with the coercion that happens, you often have to issue like a disclaimer to say, okay, well, what I'm talking about is not going to be violent. What I'm talking about is not going to be a threat. What I'm talking about is, within the margins of the law. What I'm talking about is not an incitement to hatred or violence, etc. This is seeking the approval of the state so that they don't continue to retaliate and to criticize you or to harass you. So I would agree that or I acknowledge that, I have done that to say, hey, this is what I'm talking about, so don't come after me. And this is the way in which the bully keeps its control, because it chills speech, and in essence, sometimes you can't speak freely about what you want to talk about when you're going through transnational repression, because, to reiterate, transnational repression for state agents, this is a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week phenomenon, 365 days a year, and they're looking for any and everything to pull out of context so that they can frame you as the bad person. Loss of control. The bully's behavior steadily deprives their victims of any feeling of control over their situation. Where have we seen this? So I often use my own personal circumstances and experiences to showcase how this happens. Well, this happened when I tried to sue Queen's University Belfast, the Police Service of Northern Ireland, as well as Nisos Group Limited, and here in Belfast. And I was not allowed to go through the judicial process. I wasn't allowed to vindicate my rights. I wasn't allowed to actually have my claims heard in court. So that's part of it. And then the other part is I wasn't allowed to have a solicitor here in Belfast. I called approximately 70 solicitors, and all of them said they don't take human rights cases, don't take commercial law cases, consumer law cases, they don't take information right cases. And this is all a loss of control, because it allows the bully to maintain control and maintain the narrative. And so, for example, if I sued the state and the university, and to reiterate, although the university did give me my diploma in international human rights law, that is by no means an end to my claims against the university, because one thing, it never issued an apology. Two, it didn't give me a recommendation letter. And then three, there's still a lot that happened that wasn't addressed. And so the one thing that I constantly strive for is the right to truth. And if I feel like I'm not getting the truth in the situation, especially when it revolves around human rights, or when it revolves around personal rights, then there's just not going to be any conciliation between me and that opposing side. So loss of control. The bully's behavior steadily deprives their victim of any feeling of control over their situation. So by allowing me to have a solicitor, which they deprived me of, they called every solicitor. And ladies and gentlemen, this is important for you to understand how intelligence agencies work. They contacted and called every solicitor here in Belfast, everyone that you can think about, and told them not to represent me. How diabolical is that? How diabolical is that? At least in a society, you're supposed to have legal representation to vindicate your rights. But see, for them, the reason why they didn't want me to have legal representation is because they didn't want me to win. And that is their whole purpose, is to create conditions to where I'm not winning. And they were so upset when I won last year my Section 95 support back, that they did everything that they could to rip it away from me again by engaging in entrapment techniques, which I will link in the description box below. And I'll probably do, like, I'm thinking about doing a series on the unethical behaviors of the Home Office and their complicity in helping states like the US and the Republic of Ireland perpetrate transnational repression. I'm still thinking about it. Isolation. Remember, I talked about this earlier. Isolation. The victim is encouraged to feel that they are alone, that they are the only person in the world who feels like this. Colleagues, so people like in your university, are turned off and warned off. So remember, when I talk about transnational repression and I talk about how the Republic of Ireland and the United States are perpetrators of this, what the authority figures have tried to make me feel throughout this whole process, even when I'm speaking to family members, is that, okay, you're the only one that feels like that's happening, so you must be wrong. When really, in essence, ladies and gentlemen, that this happens to people all the time. And to reiterate, there is a large body of evidence that the United States, if you look at, I believe it's Dana Moss's new book, Transnational Repression. Her new book talks about that there is a lacuna in the research, especially when it deals with a populational gap, a empirical gap, a theoretical gap. There's a lacuna in the research where most of the research that we're reading on transnational repression is focused on states within the global north, but not enough research is done on states within the global south, but not enough research is done on states within the global north, such as the US government and the Republic of Ireland, who are strong perpetrators of transnational repression. And so it is to encourage people like myself to feel that I'm alone in the way that I feel, and that I'm alone in this world because I am speaking out against transnational repression. And think about all of the money that they have devoted to engaging in acts of transnat. All the money, so much money. Like, you have to pay people to surveil. So that's payment for that. And then you have to pay people to pay attention to, on the digital transnational repression side, to pay attention to what you're doing 24 hours, 7 days a week. So all of that money that they are using to engage in transnational repression, to bring a person down, to bring their citizens down, to bring their allies' citizens down, they could be using that money for positive endeavors, such as programs that uplift people, programs that incorporate, and not only programs that would incorporate, but programs that would allow you to assimilate. But they're not doing that. Basically, they're putting a lot of money into trying to isolate you so that they can make you out to be the heavy. It's, to ostracize you, to isolate you, and to scapegoat you. So I want to reiterate that the bully's hold seems to comprise of isolation. The victim is encouraged to feel that they're alone, that they're the only person in the world who feels like this. And if you feel like you're the only person in the world who feels as if you're going through transnational repression, then you start to have doubts about whether or not it truly is happening. And that is the whole purpose That is the whole purpose, and that is the psychiatry, the abusive nature of it, is that the state wants you to doubt exactly what you know. Immoral behavior. The bully will lie, cheat, deceive, and generally behave in such an obnoxious manner as to imply no scruples, no principles, and no conscience. The bully often acts beyond the bounds of decency, etiquette, civility, and the law, as if the standards do not apply to them, with the expectation normally fulfilled of not being called to account. Well, where do we see this? We can go back to the justice system here in Northern Ireland, as well as when I was in the Republic of Ireland. Because I tried, when I was going through transnational repression there, I tried to bring that before the courts and had persons preventing me from being able to reach the courts within the Republic of Ireland. And then here in Northern Ireland, the same thing has happened. So when I tried to file a complaint in the courts against Queen's University Belfast, to reiterate, against Sneesos Group Limited, as well as against the Police Service of Northern Ireland, I was not allowed to go through the judicial process in a civil suit. And this is to, again, so that you can't hold your perpetrators responsible. You can't hold them responsible for their criminality, and you can't hold them responsible for their actions. And this allows that to continue. Later this week, I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do an open letter that is a disappointment to the public officials that I have named in my previous open letter, that they haven't actually spoken out against this practice yet. It's so deeply concerning to me that they haven't spoken out about it, and this allows it to continue. And I'm looking forward to really debunking the Police Service of Northern Ireland as well, because they have not investigated these acts of cybercrime that leads me to believe that they're an active perpetrator in engaging in this kind of activity. I've called the police a number of times to report incidents of cyber harassment and cyberbullying, which is happening, but yet the Police Service of Northern Ireland has failed to investigate it. And I don't think it's because of a lack of resources. I think because they're actively involved in it. And I think that there is this culture of misogyny within the Police Service of Northern Ireland and these intelligence agencies that they have yet to deal with how to treat communities that aren't white or male, essentially. Fear. Lastly is fear. It is used by the bully to disempower, who reinforces the hold by encouraging their victim to believe that any action which does not meet with the bully's approval will automatically qualify that person for disciplinary action, which may result in consequences. So what does this bring to mind? This brings to mind where you're constantly making sure that the things that you do is not a disruption, or that it's not only is it not a disruption, but it's not, I would almost argue that it is not an affront to the prevailing order or the status quo. And so that's how the bully maintains their control, is fear. Because, and I want to give you an example, is Marco Rubio's Cuba report. Now, if you haven't seen my series called Marco Rubio, Misinformation Czar, That is on YouTube. I'll link it in the description box below. It's regrettable that I'm searching for that on Google and it appears to be shadow banned, so I'll continue to try and get it out there. But this is another, I guess, this describes how, or Marco Rubio's Cuba report is, in essence, the fear element, because in that report, it is naming multiple groups that I haven't personally seen engage in any violent criminal activity, and yet they're named in that report to chill your speech and to chill your political activity and to make you afraid of choosing an identity, choosing an ideological position that may be in opposite to the Republican Party, or that may even be in opposite to conservative far-right beliefs. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I think that that really encompasses the fear element, right? Because it's this, mimicking McCarthyism, where I will link that in the description box below. It's a 21-part series that I did where the state is re-envisioning and reenacting the Red Scare and the Lavender Scare and the Obsidian Scare. The state is reenacting these scares to almost, some people are being put through like congressional hearings or being threatened with congressional hearings. Some people are being labeled as communist when they're not labeled as communist. Some people are having other labels put onto them. And this is, a reenactment of the Red Scare that we have seen during the time that Joseph McCarthy was alive. And it's really deeply disappointing. And this is essentially how the bully maintains its hold on to persons. I don't argue that some of the folks within the United States, within the Cuba report, are going through transnational repression, because for, I think, a textbook transnational claim to work, the person really needs to be outside of the jurisdiction and to experience the arm of the state. And I don't think that that has happened to some of those people. But now I am looking more deeply at other cases to see to determine whether or not if it fits the definition of transnational repression. I am looking at those cases very clearly and paying close attention to them, because again, one thing that we can't do is allege that a state is putting a person through transnational repression when they're not. In my particular situation, I know that I've been put through transnational repression because I've been put through transnational repression for several years, that it has become very obvious. But in other cases, it's really not so obvious because persons have stepped out of the country for just a small, just a tiny bit of time, and then they've entered the country again, and the activity happened within the country. And so transnational repression really does happen when you are actually in a foreign nation and not within your own territory. So we may talk about that another time. At least that's what the literature says. And basically, if the literature evolves where it says that transnational repression happens on domestic land, then maybe I will change my view of that. But I think that that's really intranational or, intrastate transnational repression, or not transnational, I think it's like intrastate or interstate repression. It's not transnational. Transnational is happening between, of course, multiple states. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. I could really use some followers on YouTube. And so if you find that this video is, you find this information to be useful, if you yourself are going through transnational repression, if you're a journalist and you run across this video and you've heard about the phenomenon of transnational repression, if you are a human rights defender or a researcher and you're researching transnational repression, it would probably do you some good to follow this channel because, again, there's not any evidence before me that the states are going to stop. One question was asked to me earlier this week was that I need to, or it wasn't a question, was more a statement put to me that I need to stop talking about the state and its long arm, how it engages in transnational repression, and really there's not any room to stop talking about it because they're continually doing it each and every day. So it raises the question as to whether or not they want me to continue to talk about it, because if you really wanted me to stop talking about it, then you'd stop engaging in acts that would be defined as transnational repression. But since you haven't stopped doing that, then that leads me to believe that you want me to continue to talk about it. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. To reiterate, don't forget to follow me on Facebook. If you feel that you followed me and you've been unfollowed, I think the best thing for you to do is perhaps to send me a message by linking it in a video of mine, because again, right now I'm not receiving any email communications, and what's regrettable is that when I try and respond to comments on my YouTube channel, because of transnational repression, the component that allows me to respond to comments has been blocked. So if someone leaves a comment, sometimes I'm able to read it, but I'm not able to respond to it because the state has hacked into the account and has blocked it using some sort of HTML or CSS code or something. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. We'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.